Napoleon's Buttons, How 17 Molecules Changed History. Written by Penny Couteur and J. Burreson. Introduction. Chemistry with Consequences. The forces that have shaped history, wars, revolutions, empires, migrations, are often traced back to politics, economics, or ideology. But what if molecules played an equally decisive role? What if a pinch of cinnamon or a single atomic bond determined the rise of a superpower or the fall of a dynasty? That is the central idea behind Napoleon's Buttons, a book that invites readers to rethink history through the lens of chemistry. It argues that 17 groups of molecules, seemingly ordinary compounds like sugar, pepper, rubber, and TNT, have altered the fate of nations and civilizations. These molecules, small in size but massive in impact, changed trade routes, sparked wars, and enabled entire industrial revolutions. Take, for example, the book's title. The authors begin with a story, possibly apocryphal, about Napoleon's army retreating from Russia in the winter of 1812. Legend has it that the buttons on French uniforms, made from tin, crumbled in the cold, contributing to military collapse. Whether or not the story is true, it symbolizes a deeper truth. Materials matter. Molecules, in their structure and behavior, don't just sit in textbooks. They shape the battlefield. This bookube journeys through those 17 chapters of chemical intrigue, showing how molecular structure became historical architecture. It is a reminder that the fabric of history is woven not only by human hands, but by the invisible patterns of atoms and bonds. Chapter 1. The spice molecules: pepper, nutmeg, and clove. In the early modern world, few commodities were as coveted as spices. Pepper, nutmeg, and clove were so valuable that they drove global exploration, fueled colonial conquest, and triggered bloody wars. Behind this lay a collection of molecules, piperine, eugenol, and isoeugenol, that gave spices their heat, aroma, and preservative power. European powers sailed across oceans in pursuit of these molecules. The Portuguese rounded Africa. The Dutch seized the Moluccas. The British laid claim to India. These weren't just culinary quests. They were molecular ones. The demand for spices shaped trade routes, justified naval empires, and ignited centuries of colonial rivalry. The irony, the authors note, is that the molecules themselves are relatively simple, yet their chemical structures made them uniquely suited to preserve food and stimulate human taste receptors. In an age without refrigeration, spices extended shelf life and masked spoilage. Their value wasn't aesthetic, it was practical, and that practical value led to bloodshed. These molecules remind us that the age of discovery was also an age of chemistry. Maps were redrawn not for glory alone, but for the volatile aromatic compounds hiding in forests and spice groves. Molecular structure became geopolitical destiny. Chapter 2. Sugar and the Empire of Sweetness. Few substances have reshaped the modern world like sugar. Behind its sweet taste lies a molecule, sucrose, that fueled colonial expansion, slavery, and global trade. Sugar plantations in the Caribbean and the Americas became engines of wealth and human misery. The molecule may be small, but its consequences were massive. Chemically, sucrose is a disaccharide composed of glucose and fructose, but its impact extended far beyond nutrition. European demand for sugar turned it from a luxury into a staple. To meet this demand, vast territories were cleared, indigenous peoples displaced, and millions of Africans enslaved. Sugar's rise was inseparable from the rise of the Atlantic slave trade. The authors explore how sugar shaped economies and diets alike. It fed the working classes of Europe while enriching colonial elites. It altered cuisine, sparked health revolutions, and contributed to dental decay and metabolic disease. Its molecular properties, long shelf life, energy density, and addictive sweetness made it a perfect commodity. Through sugar, the book illustrates how a molecule can serve as both a fuel and a fault line. Empires were built on it. Bodies were broken for it. And its legacy, from global inequality to modern diabetes, still lingers on the palette of history. Chapter 3: Cotton, Cellulose, and the Cloth of Nations. The molecule cellulose is a structural component of plant life, but in processed form, it became the foundation of the textile industry. Cotton fibers, rich in cellulose, fueled the Industrial Revolution, powered global trade, and transformed fashion. The chemistry of a plant fiber reshaped how humans clothed themselves and how nations competed. Cotton's impact was as industrial as it was imperial. Britain's textile mills devoured cotton from American plantations, creating a transatlantic economy bound together by slavery, labor, and machinery. The molecule itself, linear chains of glucose, made cotton strong, breathable, and ideal for weaving. But the real story lies in what it enabled. The demand for cotton led to innovations in spinning, dyeing, and mechanization. It also led to colonization, as European powers sought new sources of supply. India's textile industry was deindustrialized under British rule. American expansion westward was driven, in part, by cotton cultivation. The molecule wasn't just material, it was motive. The authors make clear that cellulose's importance didn't end with clothing. It also led to the invention of early plastics, like celluloid, as chemists began modifying the molecule for new purposes. What began as thread became film, buttons, and billiard balls. A plant polymer became the seed of synthetic modernity. Chapter 4: Explosives, from nitrates to nitroglycerin. Some molecules don't just change history, they blow it apart. The story of explosives begins with nitrogen compounds, nitric acid, nitroglycerin, TNT. These molecules stored enormous energy in unstable bonds, waiting for a spark. And when they exploded, they reshaped warfare, industry, and geopolitics. The authors trace how chemists like Alfred Nobel harnessed these compounds. Nitroglycerin, dangerously volatile, was stabilized into dynamite. Ammonium nitrate became a fertilizer and a bomb. TNT, or trinitrotoluene, became the explosive of choice in 2 world wars. Each molecule marked a shift in the destructive capabilities of humanity. But the applications weren't just military. Explosives built railways, mined resources, and tunneled through mountains. They enabled construction as much as destruction. The chemistry of nitrogen, so reactive, so powerful, became the chemistry of transformation, for better or worse. These chapters are among the most sobering. They show how the manipulation of molecules can magnify human ambition. Energy, once confined to fire and powder, was now released in precise chemical reactions. The age of chemistry became the age of shockwaves. Chapter 5: Dyes, Colors, and Chemical Fashion. Before synthetic dyes, colors were rare, expensive, and often derived from plants, insects, or minerals. Indigo from leaves, cochineal from beetles, Tyrian purple from sea snails. But in the 19th century, coal tar chemistry changed everything. An explosion of color flooded the world, thanks to molecules engineered in labs. The first synthetic dye, movine, was discovered by accident in 1856 by William Perkin. It launched a chemical revolution. New dyes were synthesized rapidly: brilliant blues, vibrant reds, deep blacks. These molecules, based on benzene rings and azo bonds, made color accessible, cheap, and consistent. The consequences were both cultural and industrial. Fashion became democratized. Germany became a chemical powerhouse, dominating dye production. Art, advertising, and consumer goods all changed their palettes. But there were also dangers. Some early dyes were toxic or carcinogenic, and environmental damage from dye factories was severe. Colour, once the privilege of the few, became the backdrop of modern life. Molecules that stained cloth also stained landscapes, shaped economies, and painted the world in hues that had once belonged to royalty. Chapter 6: Molecules of Health, Hormones and Wonder Drugs. Not all molecules caused harm. Some healed. The discovery and synthesis of hormones, like progesterone and testosterone, and drugs like penicillin, transformed medicine. These molecules altered gender science, reproductive rights, and life expectancy. Chemistry began to intervene directly in the machinery of biology. Steroids, derived from cholesterol, became the basis for birth control, hormone replacement, and performance enhancement. Antibiotics like penicillin changed the trajectory of infectious disease. Insulin, synthesized and refined, turned diabetes from a death sentence into a manageable condition. Each medical breakthrough began with molecular insight, identifying structures, mimicking natural compounds, modifying them for stability or potency. Pharmaceutical chemistry became a field of its own, and with it came ethical dilemmas: access, affordability, misuse, and side effects. Still, the miracle remains. Molecules built in flasks and tubes began saving lives, changing bodies, and offering new choices. The chemical century was not just about power, it was about healing. Conclusion: a molecular lens on history. History is often told through kings, wars, and treaties, but Napoleon's buttons invites us to look closer, down to the molecular level. Here, in the tiniest arrangements of atoms, lie the sparks that ignited revolutions, rewrote maps, and transformed everyday life. Molecules are not abstract. They are active agents in our shared story. The 17 compounds in this book are not exhaustive. They are representative. For every sugar that fueled slavery, there is a hormone that liberated health. For every explosive that destroyed, a pigment that delighted. The authors reveal a world in which chemistry is not backstage, it's the main character. Their approach also restores wonder to science. It shows that chemistry is not confined to labs, but is deeply embedded in human experience. Our economies, bodies, and beliefs have been shaped by molecules we cannot see, but whose consequences are everywhere.
As we face new challenges, climate change, pandemics, technological revolutions, we would do well to remember the future, too, will be molecular. And understanding the past through molecules may be one of the clearest ways to grasp what comes next.